The fluorescent lights of St. Margaret's Medical Center buzzed overhead as Sarah Mitchell clutched the crumpled denial letter in her trembling hands. Stage 3, breast cancer. Treatable, they said. Survivable, they promised. But not without insurance. That covered the treatment, her oncologist recommended. Not without $127,000 she didn't have. The clinic's billing director had delivered the news with all the warmth of a winter storm, her manicured nails clicking against the keyboard as she repeated the word, denied 3 times, in under a minute. Sarah was 52 years old, a former elementary school teacher, who'd spent 3 decades shaping young minds in rural Pennsylvania, and now she sat in a sterile waiting room, being told her life wasn't worth the financial risk. She walked out into the October afternoon with legs that barely held her weight, each step feeling like she was wading through concrete. The autumn air should have been refreshing, but it only reminded her of all the falls she might never see again. Her daughter Emma was waiting in the parking lot, 28 years old, and 7 months pregnant with Sarah's first grandchild. The baby she might never hold. "Mom," Emma's voice cracked when she saw Sarah's face. "What did they say?" Sarah couldn't answer. She just shook her head and let her daughter hold her as they both cried between the parked cars, their tears mixing with the reality that sometimes doing everything right, working hard, paying taxes, being a good person still, wasn't enough when the system decided you were expendable. What Sarah didn't know was that her story had already begun to spread beyond that parking lot. Emma's husband, Marcus, had posted about his mother-in-law's situation on social media that morning, a desperate plea to a universe that rarely answered back. He'd included a photo of Sarah at Emma's baby shower the month before, her smile radiant despite the bandana covering her hair loss from chemotherapy, her hands resting on her daughter's growing belly. The post had been shared 47 times by lunch. By dinner, it had reached thousands, and somewhere in those thousands was a man named Jack Wrench Morrison, a 59-year-old mechanic who spent his weekends riding with the Iron Brotherhood, a motorcycle club based outside Pittsburgh. Wrench had lost his own mother to cancer 15 years earlier, back when he was still drinking himself into oblivion, and his life was held together by little more than duct tape and rage. His McBrothers had saved him then, given him purpose, shown him that family wasn't just blood. It was who showed up when everything fell apart. He stared at Sarah's photo on his phone screen, sitting in his garage with grease under his fingernails and recognition in his gut. He knew that look, that hollow-eyed terror of watching someone you love slip away while bureaucrats shuffled papers and insurance executives calculated profit margins. He made a phone call. Within 2 hours, the Iron Brotherhood had mobilized. Wrench stood in the clubhouse, addressing 47 members, their leather vests bearing patches earned through years of brotherhood and charity rides. These weren't the outlaws Hollywood depicted. They were plumbers and contractors, veterans and teachers, men and women who'd learned that real strength wasn't about looking tough. It was about doing what mattered when no one was watching. "We've got a teacher who spent her life giving 2 kids who couldn't pay her back," Wrench said, his voice gravelly with emotion. "Now she needs us. I say we give her something to hope for." The vote was unanimous. Sarah knew nothing about any of this as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to Emma and Marcus whisper, worried conversations in the next room. She'd already started making peace with the unthinkable, mentally writing goodbye letters, wondering if she should record videos for a grandchild she'd never watch grow up. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful and full of nightmares about hospital bills and ticking clocks. The next morning, she woke to the sound of engines, dozens of them, thunder rolling down her quiet suburban street at 8 in the morning, enough to shake the windows and send the neighbor's dog into a barking frenzy. Sarah stumbled to the window in her bathrobe, her heart hammering with confusion and a spike of fear, only to see motorcycles lining her street like a parade. Big bikes, small bikes, choppers and cruisers, each one carrying a rider who was climbing off and walking toward her house. Emma was already at the door, her face pale. "Mom, I don't know what's happening. Should I call the police?" But then Wrench was on the porch, removing his sunglasses, his weathered face breaking into a gentle smile that didn't match his intimidating appearance. "Mrs. Mitchell, we're here to help. If you'll let us." What followed was something Sarah would struggle to explain for the rest of her life, and the rest of her life, it turned out, would be much longer than she'd feared. The Iron Brotherhood had organized a fundraiser, not just a bake sale or a car wash, but a full-scale rally that would span 3 states and culminate in a charity auction. They'd already secured donations from local businesses, commitments from other motorcycle clubs, and media coverage from news stations who smelled a story worth telling. "Why?" Sarah asked, standing on her porch, in her bathrobe, while 47 bikers crowded her lawn. "You don't even know me." Wrench's eyes glistened. "My mom died because she couldn't afford treatment. I wasn't man enough to help her then, but I'm man enough to help you now." The rally happened 3 weeks later on a Saturday that dawned crisp and clear. The kind of autumn day that makes Pennsylvania look like a postcard. Over 800 motorcycles showed up, their riders coming from as far as Ohio and New York. They rode in formation through 5 counties, stopping at checkpoints, where local communities had set up donation tables and prayer circles. Sarah rode in the lead car with Emma and Marcus, watching in disbelief as people lined the streets holding signs that read, "Hope Rides," and Sarah Strong. At the final stop, a fairground outside Pittsburgh, the auction began. Tools and artwork, vacation packages and handmade quilts, everything donated by people who'd heard Sarah's story and decided it mattered. A local construction company donated a riding lawnmower. A restaurant owner donated a year of free meals. A young girl with a lemonade stand donated $11.47 in coins, pressing them into Sarah's hand with fierce determination. "My grandma had cancer too," the girl whispered. "She's okay now. You're gonna be okay too." By the time the sun set that evening, the Iron Brotherhood had raised $143,000. More than enough for Sarah's treatment. More than enough for hope. Sarah stood on the stage as Wrench presented her with an oversized check, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt held, supported, seen, not by a system or an institution, but by hundreds of strangers who decided that her life mattered more than their convenience. "I taught kids for 30 years, Sarah said into the microphone, her voice shaking. "I always told them that kindness was a choice we made every single day. But I forgot that lesson myself. I forgot that people still choose good. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for choosing me." The crowd erupted in applause, engines revving in celebration, and Emma held her mother tight while tears ran down both their faces. Marcus captured it all on video, the bikers, the sunset, the moment his mother's story stopped being about dying and started being about living. Sarah began treatment the following Monday. The experimental therapy was brutal, but she endured it with Emma by her side and photos of that rally plastered across her hospital room. Wrench visited every week, always bringing coffee and terrible jokes, becoming the unlikely friend Sarah never knew she needed. 18 months later, Sarah held her grandson for the first time. They named him Jackson, after a man who proved that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up when everything falls apart. And when Jack Wrench Morrison held that baby in his tattooed arms, tears streaming down his weathered face, he finally understood what his mother had tried to tell him before she died, that we save ourselves by saving each other, that love is louder than engine, and that sometimes the toughest people are the ones brave enough to care.